I often notice that sequels in video games tend to be the high point of a franchise. Take Mass Effect 2 for instance, which massively improved upon the first game. Half-Life 2 is another example that's generally seen as better than the first, and many people consider Red Dead Redemption 2 their favourite game of all time. The first game in a franchise sets the stage, it sets the blueprint, and it creates a new world that tries out various concepts, which can be a success and also a failure. However, a sequel benefits from an already built world and feedback on what a lot of us enjoyed or did not enjoy about the first game. This is precisely the approach taken by Assassin's Creed 2. Now, this is a video I've always wanted to make. I've made videos about so many of the games in this franchise, so it's only right to dedicate this video to the game that pretty much solidified my love for Assassin's Creed. Now, I'm not blind to the fact that this game does have its flaws, whether it's the forced integration of a very questionable DLC, or perhaps even the fact that 15 years later, this game may seem a bit outdated and janky in some aspects, but regardless, it's still a game I fell in love with. Even if you're somebody that was put on this planet purely to hate Ubisoft, there's a big chance Assassin's Creed 2 is a game you think highly of. Early 2008 is when this game started its development, and by November 2009 the game was already available in stores and being played worldwide. That's a pretty quick time frame for a game that's this impressive. Assassin's Creed 2 improved upon pretty much everything when compared to the original game. Free running felt more smooth, combat and stealth were expanded upon, we had a lot more weapons and tools at our disposal, the story was engaging from start to finish, well that's without mentioning the DLCs, I'll talk more about that later in this video. Side characters were memorable, the modern day was better, the soundtrack was the best, we got this iconic
"It's a me, Mario!"
And to top it all off, we got introduced to the poster boy of this franchise with Ezio Auditore. Now before I unpack this brilliance of an Assassin's Creed game, this video would not be possible without the sponsor of today's video. Now let me ask you this, are you interested in a game with incredible graphics, brutal boss fights, deep tactical gameplay and over 800 completely unique champions for you to choose from? Then this is definitely the game for you. The incredible worlds of both Raid Shadow Legends and Monster Hunter are coming together for an epic crossover event. From January 9th to March 5th, you can collect 5 legendary champions inspired by the Monster Hunter monsters. And here's a bonus, you can get one of these champions being Rathalos Blade Master absolutely free just by logging in for 7 days. Players are also able to acquire the remaining 4 Monster Hunter themed champions by taking part in special events within the game, so don't forget to check in game for details on how to collect these amazing champions. This year also marks the 25th anniversary of Monster Hunter, so do be sure to explore all the exciting activities available. Simply download Raid to my link below in the description and start earning your free Rathalos Blade Master champion and join the hunt today. Dive into Raid's most thrilling adventure yet since the Doom Tower, with that being the Cursed City, with 100 levels of intense challenges including intense battles where you face 2 of Raid's incredible bosses at the same time. The excitement just never ends. Navigate through the twisted path of the Cursed City, conquer its quests, and you might just emerge with a mythical champion in your arsenal. Simply search for me under the name The Hidden One and join my clan Hidden Ones. Together we'll forge our legacy. Right off the bat you'll be rewarded with 500,000 silver, energy and chicken, and upon reaching level 15, the epic Juliana joins your ranks. As a super strong boss slaying attack type warrior with magic affinity, she excels against enemies of certain affinities, making her a valuable asset in your lineup. So what are you waiting for? Download Raid Shadow Legends now using the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Thank you once again to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. The story of Assassin's Creed 2 kicks off right where the first game ended. Desmond escapes from the Templars' control at Abstergo with the help from Lucy, who turns out to be a spy for the assassins. We meet a new group of assassins, including Sean Hastings, a British database specialist known for his very British humour, and Rebecca Crane, an engineer who operates the improved Animus 2.0. Now, having previously experienced the life of Altair, we now use the Animus 2.0 to delve into the Italian Renaissance period to walk in the footsteps of Ezio Auditore. The story begins with the very moment of Ezio's birth, and one of the first interactions we're able to do is control the movements of his little newborn arms and legs. Thinking of it now, this surely must be the only game ever made where we control the protagonist's newborn limbs. Surely it has to be, right? You see, unlike the first game, this game instantly starts off as action-packed as ever. There is no slow build-up, we're thrown straight into a fight sequence on a bridge, and then shortly after we get presented with perhaps the most iconic opening intro for a video game.
It is a good life we lead, brother.
The best. May it never change.
And may it never change us.
I remember the first time I saw this scene play out, and the feelings that were going through my mind was something unexplainable. Now yes, I know nostalgia plays a massive role in this game. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and deny that. I guess my circumstances in 2009 made me particularly favourable to this introduction. Yet even when I played the game again a few months back, I was swept up in the same emotions watching the Auditore brothers gaze into the horizon as Ezio's family plays in the background, stirring those deep feelings once more. In the first hour or so of the game, you pretty much witness Ezio in his everyday life, taking part in pretty normal activities, like collecting feathers on a rooftop for his ill younger brother, competing in rooftop races with his older brother, and facing his parents' disappointment for coming home late. Okay, maybe one out of those three things are considered normal. While these tasks may seem pointless compared to the thrill of, assassinating Templars on the go, they are pretty important in building Ezio as a relatable character before his recruitment into the Brotherhood. After all, underneath every assassin hood lies a human being, which is a detail that the very first Assassin's Creed game overlooked. These simple family errands serve not only as a pretty creative tutorial, but also help to establish a connection with Ezio's family members before the story takes a darker turn. And believe me, the story does take a goddamn darker turn. Everything dramatically changes when Ezio witnesses the execution of his father and brothers by the Florentine authorities. At this point in the story, we're pretty much branded as a fugitive and a betrayer, and we must flee the city with our mother and younger sister. That confident demeanor we quite literally just played as is suddenly overshadowed by just sorrow and anger. Think of it like this. If I hadn't experienced the family moments with Ezio, like playfully being scolded by his father, racing his brother on rooftops, or collecting feathers for Patricio, I likely would not have felt so connected. I feel like many games fail to achieve this. For example, a game like Unity. Now spoiler warning for Unity in 3, 2, 1. Unity neglects to make Elise's death emotional, leaving me to not remotely care towards the character's situation. You see, giving these virtual video game characters a human touch would massively improve the narrative impact, which is a skill that many developers lack or avoid, fearing it might bore people. Its rarity shows exactly how hard it is to pull this kind of attachment off. That's why the most iconic video game deaths are often the most emotional. It's because we witness the build up, we witness the evolution of a character, and we witness an emotional connection. Assassin's Creed 3 takes a similar approach as 2. It's not until around sequence 6 that you actually wear the assassin robes and truly start the game. The first 5 or so hours are dedicated to developing the story, which excellently sets up the following events. Seeing Connor during his early years allows us to understand his motivations and develop an attachment to him. His introduction is not forced upon us with explicit instructions to care about him. Instead, Ubisoft uses strong writing and dramatic story developments to naturally make us like Connor over time. But enough rambling about Assassin's Creed 3, let's focus back on the story of Assassin's Creed 2. So after we witness that tragic set of events with the hanging of his family, and then Ezio fleeing with his mother and sister, Ezio finds refuge with his uncle Mario Auditore, who reveals their family's connection to an ancient group of assassins. This is where we learn what had just happened and the motives behind it. We learn that the people responsible for the hanging was none other than the Templar Order. Under his guidance, this is where the game introduces us to dual hidden blades, as well as getting trained by Mario himself. The story of Assassin's Creed 2 takes us to many places: Florence, Venice, Tuscany, and our new safe house in Monteriggioni. We meet a ton of unique characters, including a youthful and overly enthusiastic Leonardo da Vinci, the charismatic Caterina Sforza, and the mysterious La Volpe. There are also other characters that play massive roles throughout the story, like that annoying little shit we fist fight right at the start of the game being Vieri de Pazzi. Gradually throughout the story, Ezio finds himself involved with organizations that are secretly opposing the Templars who he swore to defeat. He's not fully aware of what the Assassin Brotherhood truly represents until almost the end of the game. This approach is excellent for welcoming new players to the series, as it introduces players smoothly to the main storyline and the backstory of Assassin's Creed. It is quite fun to encounter and even eliminate historical figures. The opportunity to meet and collaborate with iconic personalities like Leonardo da Vinci and Niccolo Machiavelli is fantastic, and the way the game weaves other historical figures, such as the Italian poet Dante Alighieri, into the plot and even references Altair from the first game is even more excellent. What I appreciate about Assassin's Creed 2's storytelling is its character development. Ezio's story from a vengeful teenager to a fully grown mature assassin showcases his evolution as a character. He frequently contemplates humanity's future, and he does this by balancing his personal vendetta with the broader existential questions. The game effectively simulates decades of Ezio's life, making his journey feel pretty extensive, even though the game does seem relatively short. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's around 40 or 41 by the end of the story. Despite the trauma of Ezio losing his family, he still manages to always maintain that youthful charm and ability to lighten up any situation. The storytelling of Assassin's Creed 2 also reflects on Italy's history itself. We can see the influence Ezio has grow, which also causes political regimes to change. This is all due to Ezio's consequences throughout the story, or more so our choices. Now, I will admit, despite the story of Assassin's Creed 2 being my favourite in the entire franchise, I do have one slight issue with it. For one, it certainly does seem like Assassin's Creed 2's narrative really did heavily rely on Leonardo da Vinci. He fits the classic role of the ingenious inventor, and it did seem like he can craft anything at all, no matter the circumstance. I mean, he even was able to effortlessly solve ancient mysteries, but we never actually questioned this at all during the game, and the reason for that is because, well, why would we? He's Leonardo da Vinci. However, I do have to admit that his involvement feels somewhat forced for the storyline's sake. If Ezio was ever in dire need of help, the game always turns to Leonardo da Vinci to solve everything, whether it's inventing something, decoding something, or just always having the right solution for everything. It was almost like the writers used Leonardo as the answer to it all. You see, it's funny because when I made my video ranking every side character in the franchise, I placed Leonardo da Vinci as number 1, and I still stand by that, even despite what I just said. Now, there is also the ending of the story. A majority of people have issues with how Ezio dealt with Rodrigo Borgia in the vault, but am I the only one that has no issue with Ezio letting him go? If anything, it shows a big step in character development, especially knowing that Rodrigo played a massive role in his family's execution, but if he did kill him, it would not have brought his family back. It showcases the more mature side of Ezio, which, let's be honest, is a rarity, but I do understand people's frustrations when he spared him. I'm sure a lot of you would have liked to see the man we hunted throughout the entire story get killed right there, instead of, being choked to death with an apple by his son, which is a pretty tragic way to go, not gonna lie. What sounds better, fist fighting the Pope in a magical vault, or getting choked to death by your own son? Now, one thing I felt that Assassin's Creed 2's story did exceptionally well at is how it portrayed all the characters that helped us along the way as assassins. This was definitely a great twist that I did not expect. Yeah, these characters might not look like typical assassins in white hoods, but they share the same goals. This reveal fits the story well, because the assassins aim to free people from oppressors. You got the Thieves Guild, which, although are thieves, target corrupt rich people who exploit others. There's Paola, who runs a brothel that provides a safer option for women who might otherwise end up homeless. These characters might not seem like assassins at first, especially compared to those in the first game, but their actions of helping the less fortunate really embody the Assassin's Creed of quote-unquote working in the dark to serve the light. I see a lot of people think that being an assassin is just about stealth and taking out targets, but it's a lot more than that. It's also about helping people in need. Ezio's story shows us that he learns to focus on helping others, not just for revenge or obligation, but because it's the right thing to do. Now, remember earlier when I said there was one thing that was a slight negative in the story? Well, I just thought of another one, and this one I'm sure you'll agree with, and it came just before the final sequence of the game. Now, I was excited for that last mission to commence, but then the game said psych, you thought, and introduced a very unexpected obstacle, which was collecting these codex pages to advance the story. Now, this was frustrating because the game early on suggested that these collectibles were optional and were things to pick up whenever you wanted, but now they were suddenly mandatory for completing the game. I really do wish Assassin's Creed 2 got a remake. A lot of people focus on the first game or Black Flag getting a remake, but for me it's Assassin's Creed 2 because there is a lot of jank that can easily be fixed. My tip for anyone playing is to treat collecting these pages as essential from the start because, as it turns out, who'd have thought, they are. There was absolutely no way in hell that I would have made this video without talking about the 2 DLCs for this game. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, I'm talking about the Bonfires of Vanities and the Battle of Forli DLC. Now, in a game that I loved from start to finish, oh boy was this the one major issue I had. Now, just a brief explanation as to what's going on in this part of the video. So when Assassin's Creed 2 was released in 2009, DLCs were not a thing of this franchise. So after sequence 11, the game just skipped straight to bearded Ezio in Monteriggioni, of course without explaining how he got a beard. I'm pretty sure if I recall, once you complete sequence 11, Sean and Rebecca would have a conversation about damaged sequences and then skip straight to the final sequence in Rome, which at that time made a lot of sense and we didn't really think much of it. However, there are people that have actually never played the game back in 2009, but instead played it relatively recently. In fact, if you played Assassin's Creed 2 for the first time in the past 8 or 9 years, then you would have gone through the entire game without realizing that DLC was added. I believe the PC version, the console Game of the Year edition, and also the Ezio collection were the additions of Assassin's Creed 2 with these 2 forced DLCs integrated into it. As a result of this, sequence 12 and 13 were suddenly a thing now. Okay, now that I've given the backstory, let's talk about both DLCs. First, the Battle of Forli, aka sequence 12. So this DLC consists of 6 main story memories, as well as a special memory that lets us use Leonardo da Vinci's flying machine over the city of Forli. The story of this DLC carries on from when we took back the apple from Rodrigo in Venice. The idea was to seal away the apple in Forli's citadel, which was to be safeguarded by an ally named Caterina Sforza. We then head to Forli to meet her, but find the city overrun with mercenaries under the Orsi brothers, Cecco and Ludovico, who are after a map made by Caterina's late husband. Oh, and we also get introduced to this iconic scene.
You think you can threaten me? I'll give you nothing! You want my children? Take them! I have the instrument to make more!
Now this map that these two brothers are after shows the locations of pages from Altair's codex, which the Templars believe will lead them to the vault. After some fighting, we then get Katerina and her guards to the safety of the Rocca di Ravaldino fortress and help reclaim it. Now what's interesting about this specific fortress is that it was a key location way earlier in the game, so they pretty much reused it entirely. Now, plot twist. The OC brothers managed to kidnap Katerina's children as a distraction. The game then pretty much sends us on a mission to rescue them and kill one of the brothers. Now, at this point in the DLC, it's a complete mess. We went from the Apple of Eden, Rodrigo Borgia and the Vault, to now rescuing kidnapped children and fighting against two stupid brothers that have no correlation to the overarching story. It totally breaks the flow of the narrative, so you pretty much spend time with two characters you've only been introduced to. You'll pretty much run across marshy fields on a horse, kill hundreds of people in what's meant to be a stealth mission, and just generally do the stuff you usually do. I guess the big problem with this is that the DLC takes place after all the major players have been introduced, and after a very conspicuous scene in which all the major players get together. Now fast forward to the end of the DLC where we rescue the children, kill the brothers and recover the stolen apple. Ezio manages to get himself stabbed in the process, and this causes him to pass out, dropping the apple, which is then picked up by a mysterious figure missing a finger. Now do bear in mind, this mysterious character is somebody we've never seen before, and does not seem to have any grand plans or actual involvement in the plot. Now at this point, if you only have the Battle of Forli DLC, the game will randomly fast forward you to a sequence that makes no sense where Ezio has the apple again. However, I'm pretty sure you most likely do have the other DLC, being the Bonfire of Vanities. Now after the mysterious man steals the apple, we then learn that the mysterious individual was a man named Girolamo Savonarola, and from here is where the second DLC takes place, aka the Bonfires of Vanities. A much longer and much more tedious DLC in my opinion. Oh, and by the way, we've time skipped 9 whole years, meaning Ezio was searching for that damn apple for 9 years. And the funny part is, the apple thief is in Florence, Ezio's fucking hometown. In this DLC, we team up with a new friend in the Altrano district to overthrow Savonarola, who we know is the monk controlling Florence, as well as being the apple thief. So in order for us to do this, we have to eliminate his 9 lieutenants, who under his influence have become extremely oppressive. Pretty much all we did was hunt down 9 nameless lieutenants who do not impact the main story. After taking down each lieutenant, you're often forced into battles with large groups of tough enemies. These opponents, which are brutes and pikemen, are not challenging at all, but instead are time consuming to defeat due to their insane amount of health. We have the options of fighting, fleeing, or using smoke bombs to escape, all of which feel unsatisfying. One mission requires you to assassinate a doctor, where blending in is easy, but making the actual kill is quite difficult due to the need of precise movement. A slight mistake results in being pushed aside by the guards and detected, which frustratingly resets the mission. The main frustration is not actually the stealth gameplay in this DLC, but the harsh penalty for small errors. The worst lieutenant to assassinate was the one who sings atop the massive Santa Maria del Fio Cathedral. I know I'm not the only one with that opinion. You see, reaching him is a challenge because the actual cathedral is ginormous, making it very hard to hear his singing until you're almost at the very top. Now, unlike the rest of Assassin's Creed 2, where being spotted in stealth missions usually means you just have to fight, the Bonfire of Vanities DLC is way less forgiving. If you're seen before you kill your target, it's game over, even if you're caught during the assassination or while diving to attack from above. Once you kill the target, guards are alerted and you have to fight your way out. This strict stealth requirement turns what could be exciting missions into tedious sneaking around missions, especially in the case of the singing priest on the massive cathedral, where being spotted forces you to restart from the bottom. Now, what I felt the DLC should have done to make this entire sequence more fun would have been to reduce the number of lieutenants and instead involve the player in missions to gather intelligence on a few well-developed supporters of Savonarola. This would have prioritized quality over quantity and gave us a much more meaningful experience rather than chasing after numerous underdeveloped characters. Now, the one positive thing I can say about this DLC is that it gave us a very iconic speech, but other than that, it's one of the worst DLCs in this franchise. I feel like if Assassin's Creed 2 did not have both the Battle of Forli and the Bonfire's Vanities DLCs, the game would have smoothly transitioned from the scene where all the key characters are introduced to the final act, creating a sense of culmination where we go to the vault. Ubisoft Montreal really improved the gameplay side of Assassin's Creed 2, addressing many issues from the first Assassin's Creed. Now, I was concerned about how the game would handle introducing new skills. In the first game, you start from scratch, and I worried the sequel might do the same. However, my concerns were quickly alleviated. The game acknowledges players' progress from the previous game by starting us off with the skills that we had acquired before, and then builds on them. This means I was already familiar with the basics, and the game could focus on teaching me new abilities on top of those. The controls are greatly improved, and I was pretty glad to find that the combat had become genuinely engaging. The combat is enjoyable and the improvements in the weapon system add a lot of depth to the gameplay. We've got all the abilities from the first game and even more. Besides the standard weapons like the hidden blades, swords and daggers, you can now use a wide variety of weapons including maces, axes, swords, spears, pitchforks and even a broom? Each weapon type offers different unique attacks and fighting styles. However, despite the excitement for new weapons, some did kinda seem to lack purpose beyond achieving certain achievements. For example, despite having access to both short and long blades, I found myself rarely using them since unarmed combat feels a lot more stronger. I guess the thrill of disarming an opponent and using their own weapons against them is far more pleasing than simple stabs. I do like that Assassin's Creed 2's weaponry was massively overhauled. You see, unlike Assassin's Creed 1 where altair became weaker after certain events, Assassin's Creed 2 starts you off with basic weapons and lets you acquire and upgrade to more stronger ones, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. You can also upgrade your armor for increased health. However, the main motivation to collect and upgrade seems to be either going after achievements or simply the drive of being a completionist that aims to obtain everything the game has to offer. One underrated feature of weaponry that Assassin's Creed 2 gets right is the wrist-mounted gun that can shoot one of two things, either bullets or poison. I will say that Assassin's Creed Brotherhood expanded on the hidden gun a lot. In Assassin's Creed 2, the hidden gun did take a while to aim, but the satisfaction of being able to take out a guard from pretty far was worth that long ass aim time. This game also expanded more with the use of smoke bombs and health potions, replacing the automatic health regeneration from the first game. Beyond the standard moves like dodging, counter-striking and disarming, you can now grab enemies to perform special moves like headbutts, punches and kicks, or throw them against objects, which surprisingly can collapse and often kill the enemy. I did notice that Ezio is a lot more nimble, capable of performing assassination moves from various positions. It's particularly satisfying to spring up and take out a guard from a haystack. The game has also improved the mechanics of blending into crowds too. You can now recruit different factions to assist in distracting or eliminating guards. My preferred method was to enlist courtesans to accompany me and draw guards away from their posts peacefully. Besides courtesans, you can also hire mercenaries and thieves or scatter coins to cause a commotion. I will say those guitar playing NPCs have to be the most annoying thing in this game. I remember in one mission I saw my target and was about to approach him to assassinate him. Next thing you know, the guitar NPC comes out of nowhere and starts playing that shit tune. Courtesans for me proved to be the most effective because they can follow you, making it a lot easier to discreetly follow targets. The variety in mission objectives also adds to the game's richness, offering a much more engaging storyline. Whether you're tracking messengers, setting up decoy guards, or making a getaway in a carriage, the game keeps the experience fresh and exciting. Gone are the times where you would need to finish a set number of side missions in order to progress the main storyline. Instead, Assassin's Creed 2 focuses on codex pages and exploring assassin tombs as the main gameplay activities outside the main story. In Assassin's Creed 1, I felt like the structure of a lot of the missions was not that great. They felt monotonous where it was sticking to a formulaic approach with Altair. He would pretty much enter a city, talk to an informant, collect information, and then assassinate the target. These activities lacked any type of challenge and excitement, with the information gathering phase becoming quickly tedious. Even the assassinations were predictable. The process often involved quietly approaching a target, dealing with a few guards and then completing the assassination. If a guard detected us, it rarely impacted the outcome, as we often still succeeded in eliminating the target. This critique extends to the game's side missions as well. While it's somewhat satisfying to rescue civilians from corrupt guards, there's no real incentive to do so. You don't gain anything from these actions, which just reduces the motivation to take part in these tasks. So that's why I gotta give credit to the way Assassin's Creed 2 handles its mission structure and level designs. Another big gameplay improvement was the way notoriety was handled. This system was operated a lot differently compared to the first game. While you still have a notoriety meter next to your health, hiding alone will not reduce your notoriety level. Instead, you have to engage in specific actions to decrease your wanted status, which allows you to roam the streets without being attacked by guards. This adds a bit more complexity to returning to your normal activities like free running and completing missions. Generally, it's manageable until you reach notoriety rank 3, which does take some effort to achieve unless you're in a restricted area or fully involved in certain missions. The first Assassin's Creed game is set in a stark Abstergo facility dominated by white and grey tones, while the ancient cities Altair visits, which are Jerusalem, Acre, Damascus and Masyaf, appear somewhat bland and lacking in colour. Each of the three main cities is divided into 3 districts, and despite their architectural and layout differences, they can kind of feel repetitive to each other. The repetitive dialogue of preachers, civilians and guards all across the city only adds to this feeling, despite the impressive historical accuracy in the city's designs. Assassin's Creed 2 massively improves the setting with larger, much more diverse cities and a much more natural progression to areas, eliminating that back and forth travel of the first game. The missions are integrated throughout the districts, offering much more interesting activities. Among the 5 main regions, Florence, Tuscany, Monteriggioni, Romagna and Venice, for me it's Venice that stands out as the most impressive, with distinct architectural styles and much more vibrant street life. People's interactions and the NPC activity only added to the game's lively atmosphere, and even the presence of water in Venice just increases this scenic beauty, although the game does kind of lack civilian life on rooftops and balconies which are solely populated by guards. Now the thing I love about Renaissance Italy in this game is that it's not just visually stunning, but it's also educational and provides insights into a significant period of history where it highlights various landmarks. If you watch any of my previous videos, you know how much I talked about the likes of the Santa Maria del Fiore and even the Palazzo della Signora. These are just some of the landmarks in this game that I adore. The game keeps things interesting with its diverse city environments. You start by navigating the rooftops of Florence, then move to climbing the structures of San Gimignano, running through Forlì's muddy fields, and finally jumping over Venice's famous canals. The game's pace ensures that you're always engaged, moving you to a new city just when you start feeling too familiar with the current one. While the series has seen gameplay improvements in later entries, in my opinion, none have quite matched the detailed world and the variety of cities presented in this game. So there you have it, Assassin's Creed 2 is probably my favourite game in this franchise. Now I'll admit it, nostalgia does play a part in this, but not a massive part, because the story of Assassin's Creed 2 is my favourite Assassin's Creed story. The world is beautiful, especially with how many cities and environments there were. This was definitely a massive improvement from the original Assassin's Creed. We also got introduced to the most iconic protagonist in this franchise, as well as one of the most iconic in video game history. In terms of replayability, I will say that this game isn't the best in that regard, as there is not anything new that can happen in other playthroughs or story changes. And besides, once you finish the story of Assassin's Creed 2, the game places you back into the Animus so you can go after any missed collectibles or achievements that you want. There's a reason this game remains a fan favourite and highly regarded, and while it might not be considered the best to a lot of people, for me it holds a special place in my heart. If you did enjoy this video, please do consider subscribing as it will help me out quite a lot. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.